Hi, y'all. I know some of y'all are already looking into curriculum for the next school year, and it's actually a pretty good idea because a lot of sales, a lot of deals happen in the springtime. So I thought I'd quickly get on here so I can share with y'all how we decide on what curriculum to go with in our homeschool. In case you're new here, my name is Yuri, and I am a working homeschooling mom to 5 kids, and we have been homeschooling for 10 years. And when I go through the research and brainstorming of figuring out what we're going to use for homeschooling materials for the next school year, I kind of go through a mental checklist that when we initially started homeschooling, it was a bit of a work trying to figure things out. But after that first initial year, this figuring out part, figuring out what to use for the next school year, it actually gets a lot easier, where you hardly have to go through this mental checklist. I would first look into what are the requirements for your state. And there is a website with the Homeschooling Legal Defense Association, hslda.org, I believe. And you're going to get all the plentiful information about what is required for your specific state. And depending on the requirements, you may want to cater the curriculum choices accordingly. What are the classes? What are the subjects that you need to cover? In our great state of Texas, at least up until the 8th grade, we are required to include spelling, reading, grammar, math, and good citizenship. And if you have a high school student, you may need to consider certain course requirements based on your students' post-high school goals. And if college is in the plan, I look into how many credits and what sort of courses the student will need in order to graduate. So in our state of Texas, you need 22 credits in order to graduate. But if you are a more competitive student and want to get into like more competitive schools, you're going to need 26 credits. And those are going to come from courses like English, math, social studies, science, physical education, and fine arts. I would also make sure you know how many days are required for your state as in terms of attendance. And that can easily be found on the hslda.org website. And typically it's 180 days. But in our state of Texas, there actually is no requirement for how many days of attendance. Most curriculum does cover 180 days worth of materials, but I'm putting this out there in case you want to piecemeal your materials on your own, and also to have a structured guideline that will help you to determine if there's any wiggle room in your school year, because that could determine how many days in the week you want to have school days. You may want to have 4 days or 3 days of school and maybe have a co-op day or a field trip day. And that also gives you a little bit of wiggle room in order to figure out if you want to go on some family travels or for sick days or any other interruptions that happen in life. And of course, I can also help determine what sort of breaks you're going to take during the school year. Even if you are a year-round homeschooling family, you may take like 6 weeks on for homeschooling, and then maybe you take a week off just to catch up, or also to figure things out and just take a break. Or you may take actual breaks in the winter and in the summer, like maybe 6 weeks in the winter and 6 weeks in the summer. But the beauty of it is that as a homeschooling family, you get to determine what sort of a schedule you like to have. The next thing I like to do is to evaluate what curricula is working and which ones are not. And so sometimes I would like to interview my kids and ask them whether they like the curriculum that they're using, and if they like to continue with that particular one, or maybe switch it up for the next school year. I never regret having tried a certain program, because then we know like what sort of learner we have and what is working and what kind of resources that particular kid actually enjoys. So I never regret the materials that we try, but it's always a good idea to kind of evaluate how it's going. And sometimes that might be a mid-year check. It doesn't have to be at the end of the year. It can be in the mid-year. It could be quarterly. You can check up on how it's going quarterly. And don't feel bad if you have to just ditch a curriculum right in the beginning of the year or in the middle of the year, even though you've gotten through so much of the curriculum already. Because if your kid is struggling so much and it's just in tears trying to get through a program, I'm not sure if that's really worth it. Is it really worth the pain and the stress? Because it could be stressful for the parent and also for the child. So it's always good to have these evaluations throughout the year just to make sure that everything is going relatively smoothly. And of course, you don't want to give up on a program right away, because maybe they just need a little bit of a more guidance into a program, and they'll be fine. But sometimes a program can be so painful for a child where it's just not worth the stress. Another thing to remember and consider in your checklist is to figure out your curriculum style, because you may need a program that is more student-led. So one that a student can just take and be able to work more independently. Or maybe you prefer something that's more parent-led. So this is one of my top considerations, because as a working mom of 5 kids, I kind of need something that our kids can learn to be more independent with. And for instance, we have loved and been using CLE, which is Christian Light Education. And I love that program because it really helps the student learn to be more independent. Because the format is quite predictable for the student, and it also helps and fosters a learning of how to check your own work. And that includes your quizzes and tests. But if you are more flexible, get your kids' input on it and ask them whether they would like to do work more independently, or if they would like to do something that's more like a group learning. Before I continue, I want to thank you all so much for supporting this channel. We would really appreciate it if you could smash that like button and even subscribe to this channel and follow us along. Next, I asked, how much planning is this curriculum going to involve? Do you want to have a lot to plan? Which may happen with some project-based programs, such as moving beyond the page. Or do you want something that's more open and go, which is what we usually opt for? Because as a working parent, I don't have the time or energy or the motivation to just sit down and methodically plan out a program. And I honestly don't feel like I'm very good at it. I'm not very good at even following a plan. So for me, I need something that's simply laid out, straight and to the point, and pretty much open and go. So you can decide whether you want something that does involve some planning or something that's more open and go. We also talk about whether we are going to be part of a co-op or not, because that might help you determine whether you need a program that allows you for a 4-day school week instead of a 5-day school week. So we are part of a CC, a Classical Conversations community that meets 1 day a week. While it's really fun for our kids to get together in a group setting, but it's still 1 full day in the week that is kind of like an interruption in the week. So that can help you decide on what sort or what curriculum to go with, because maybe you need a program that only needs you to cover it for 4 days in that week instead of 5. But of course, if you don't finish it in the school year, it's not a big deal. I mean, we are homeschooling, right? We have the freedom to be able to carry it over into the next school year. And sometimes, depending on what our season is or what our situation is, we have had to carry or continue or finish our curricula in the summertime. Are there any interests that the kids would like to explore, even within the core subjects of math, history, and science? And if she has future goals in mind, you may want to cater classes based on those goals. One of our kids is obsessed with animals, and especially dogs. So we may try to do some sort of a unit study and learn more about dogs. And for our kid who loves to cook and bake, or is really interested in cooking and baking, because she's only 6 years old, so she's not really in the kitchen that much. But for her, I mean, I would love to do some sort of a science in the kitchen for her. And for our future doctor, we're leaning towards some courses that might involve more health and anatomy. it's always beneficial to try to choose courses based on your kids' interest, because those are the courses they will probably remember the most. Finally, we question what our financial circumstances are. Do we need something that is consumable, that can be reused multiple times, with maybe like recycled through several children? Or maybe we need something that could be used in a group setting with multiple kids in varying ages. We do prefer a lot of consumable resources because we do live in a tight space. We live in an RV. But we also do like the materials that can be cycled through several children, because it's nice when we already have that resource on hand. And remember that homeschooling can be as affordable as you make it to be, and also as expensive as you make it to be. So I'm talking, it could be pretty much free to thousands of dollars. So consider how you want your homeschool to be and what your family needs are. And if you'd like some ideas on some free courses, don't forget to check out this video, and I'll see you in the next one.